welcome everybody to the second part of the card ratings for drafting. Now, before I continue on to the evil aspects, I would like to revisit one card from the previous video, specifically Mr. Elgaron, who I rated 4 stars, I believe. I'm gonna bump him up to 5 stars, and my reasoning for this is that he's not that different from Karthus, in that while Karthus gives you a direct kill on one single thing, Elgaron could potentially also let you come back in the game in some way. It's different from Karthus, but I don't consider it worse than Karthus. And so I think a huge creature with a potential to get you back in the game has got to be 5 stars. I mean, that's the very definition of a bomb card. So, well done, Elgaron. Welcome to 5 stars. Anyways, moving on to the rage aspect. Now, a number of cards were added into my collection for the purposes of testing, so I'm going to cover those up so as not to spoil them. I mean, it wouldn't matter that much anyways, because these are not final anyways. You guys have seen one of the cards already, the spider, so I guess I don't have to cover that one since that's already out. So yeah, you might see the name of it, but I'm not gonna reveal the stats. Anyways, moving right along. We're starting things up with Tribute to the Fire Lord, one of the shrines. And I'll give this one, I think, 4 stars. What it is ultimately is rechargeable removal. You do have to discard a card, which is kind of lame that you don't control it. But still, 3 damage, it's basically Fireball, but, you know, not instant and can't go face. That's a big deal, but it's still pretty nice to have this. Oh yeah, and it costs 3 aspects. But if you don't have a lot of removal, hey, this is pretty much as good as it gets. And because it's a shrine, you can Divine Offer for it aggressively and find it pretty quickly. Fire God Temple, that's a 1-star card. The whole target emblem thing is just not going to work out. There's not enough synergy for this. There needs to be a card that reads something like, you know, when this creature enters the field, destroy a creature with a target emblem or something. If we had a card like that, then the target emblem business might actually be good. But as it is, it's just not good enough. Was it Flame Rune Warrior is about the only target emblem card that doesn't suck, really. And Cannonade, I guess. So, no chance. Mountain Sanctuary. That's an easy 1-star. The whole Totem Shaman thing just doesn't work out. I'm going to give you a spoiler. Pretty much all the totems and shamans get rated 1 star, with one exception, because they are all super synergistic cards. Yeah, if you drafted like 7 totems and 9 shamans, I guess that would be good. But the thing is, until you do, the whole shaman archetype relies on a few very key cards. So, Totem of Swiftness, for instance, is only good when you have all the other stuff. Yard Priest is insane, but only if you have all the other stuff. So, it's like a house of cards, and if you don't have enough building blocks, the whole thing falls apart. I am yet to see a shaman deck that's anything better than mediocre. I have seen a few players try this, and it wasn't too bad, but it wasn't great either. And, you know, if you fail, then your deck is gonna suck. This is not like the soldiers version where you could just add soldiers to your deck because they're decent cards. The shamans themselves all suck without totems. The totems themselves all suck without shamans, with like maybe some notable exceptions. I'll get to those. Goblin Warrior, 3 stars. Whoops, there you go. Feel like it's a standard rating for just 1-drops. Most 1-drops aren't that amazing, though it's nice to have, I suppose. Now, note on the Goblin Warrior is that if you are going aggressively with Rage, which is not too hard to do because you've got another 1-drop with the Lizard Barbarian, and you've got the excellent Tortured Orc, cards like this do get better if you're going aggressively. So it's a 3 stars at base, bumping it up to 4 stars if you're going particularly aggressively. In that case, for instance, a Goblin Warrior might be a better pick than Red Dragon, right? Which seems weird, but if you're playing aggressively, that makes sense. And again, reinforcing the idea of, you know, this is just a basic rating. How good any card is in your deck is going to largely depend on your own deck. But hey, This is how we go. Gruul's also 3 stars, so I don't even have to remove it. While this is technically better than most 1-drops. No. Oh, it's better than something like Pegasus. Well, no, Pegasus is a 1/1 with flying and 2 speed. 3 speed is kind of like flying. So you could say, how is this better than Pegasus? Well, the effect is interesting. And yeah, it'll sometimes not do anything. It'll, in fact, often not do anything. But it could do something. If you play it on turn 1 and you hit something with a target emblem, if he survives and hits the face, which he could because of 3 speed, again, maybe I'm being a little bit generous here, but I do think this card is better than something like Pegasus or an unsupported drone. Lizard Barbarian, 3 stars, pretty much the same as Goblin Warrior. Pretty much exactly the same philosophy applies. If you're going aggressively, these guys are good. If not, well, they suck. Between this and the Goblin Warrior, which one is better? It's kind of hard to tell. This one has 2 health, which is nice, but it only has 1 attack. I guess they're about equal. Totem of Swiftness, 1 star. It's absolutely useless without a very strong synergy. Like even if you drafted 5 of these and a few shamans, it wouldn't really do anything. Since shamans themselves are not that powerful, with the exception of the few that are, specifically Yard Priest. But, I mean, you'd have to draft, again, you have to have a lot of shamans and a lot of totems for all of that to come together. And by itself, this card is terrible. Even with a little bit of support, this card is terrible. Ancestor's Guide, I will be generous and give this 2 stars. Only because, well, 2 reasons. Number 1, it has 3 speed. That's something. Generally, any creature with 3 speed is not going to get 1 star unless it's just super bad. It's some kind of a terrible effect. Because it has 3 speed, it can hit face. It can maybe sometimes help you trade. And there are games, every now and then, where your opponent plays this on 2 and then proceeds to kill every creature you play, and then this thing ends up hitting you for like 7. It can happen. It can. So, yeah. I mean, in an aggressive deck, you could technically say this is not bad. And it's kind of like a super Lizard Barbarian because it's the same stat line, but it's faster, but then can get more than 2 attack. But if your opponent plays, you know, an Elf Warrior, for instance, then already this card is really bad. So, I'm not a big fan of this one, but it certainly doesn't deserve to be called 1 star. And in some cases will be better than 2 stars. Blood Frenzy, I'm going to give this one 3 stars. It very much depends on your situation. This card is extremely good when you're ahead, because if you have, let's say, 5 creatures and they play 2 creatures to oppose it, you can just play Blood Frenzy and usually kill off all the enemy guys. But if the situation is reversed, and they have 5 creatures and you have only 2, this card is completely useless. So, in general, because of that, I'm going to put it in the middle, but you would be perfectly justified in thinking it's like 1 star. And in some cases it will be. I suppose I should actually call it 2 stars. You know what, I am going to call it 2 stars. Because win more cards are less good than comeback cards. And this is certainly not. The number of times I'm imagining this being good is less than the number of times it's bad. And if a card is only good when you're like way ahead, then it's not really that good, really. And a lot of cards are good when you're ahead. So we're going to bump them down to 2 stars. Burning Rage. Woo! 1 star. There's not a lot of Rage action cards you're going to get. Yeah, Fireball is one of them. But most of the time, this is just 2 mana, do nothing. So that kind of sucks. And this is epic, so you're not going to see a lot of it. I mean, you'd have to draft mostly Fireballs, I guess. That's the most commonly seen common action card. Maybe Detonate, but Detonate might not even do anything. Lightning Bolt would be great with this. But, yeah. I mean, it's pretty much like Dark Portal, where it's terrible by itself, but with the right support could be really good. But it just doesn't seem very likely that it would work out. Detonate. Good old Detonate. Do you remember how shit this card used to be? Well, we're going to give it 3 stars. Mostly for the middle effect of dealing 1 damage to all creatures, which certainly can be useful. Now, destroying artifacts as a side bonus, yeah, that can come in handy. Sometimes bumping up helms or destroying artifacts like airships. The card certainly has its place. It's better in a best of 3 when you can side. You can side this in and out if you're up against an artifact-heavy deck. Obviously, this gets a lot better. And just 1 damage AoE is, you know, that's always useful. Fia the Dragon Daughter, I'll give her the same rating I gave Dwarven Musketeer, which is exactly 3 stars. She has exactly the same stat line. It has that extra effect, but I don't think it's that good of an effect, since you have to sacrifice her. And first of all, you have to hit face for her to even get the bonus. And yeah, she used to be, I remember she used to be ranged and swift, but only a 1/1. But that was kind of cool. I think this one, honestly, I don't think she's seen any play since she was changed, and nothing to write home about in draft either, I'm afraid. Fireball, 5 stars. Pretty much the best rage card, I think, other than maybe Phoenix and Dragon. But in terms of utility, you cannot beat this. It's instant. It can hit face. It can kill a lot of creatures. It's amazing. I mean, this will be one of those cards I'd consider rating 6 stars, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Anyways, basically, if you're playing Rage, pick up as many fireballs as you possibly can. That's all I can really say. Anarchist! Oh my goodness. 2 stars. So, this one, it seems good. You know, a 3/2 is a pretty scary looking stat line. But the problem is, you cannot play him alongside other aggressive cards because the effect triggers when your opponent attacks it, which means your opponent can trigger it. Let me give you an idea. Let's say you play this on 2, your opponent plays an Elf Scout or Elf Warrior, and you play a second one of these. Your opponent can just attack one of your Anarchists with the Elf Warrior, trade it, and then it'll have to assign 2 damage to the other Anarchist. And likewise, if you have 2 Anarchists, they can't both attack. They'll kill themselves. So, it can work, but you have to be more mid-rangey, where this is the card you start with. And maybe it's this card and Tortured Orc, because Tortured Orc can take the hit. But you cannot play this with Goblins and with Gibbos and Ronies, which are also common cards in Rage. So, it's a lot of effort for the extra attack, which admittedly is good. You know, having the 3 attack means you can trade up and deal a lot more damage. But you're paying quite a price. Best synergy is, of course, with Rocky Berserker, because if you can activate Rocky Berserker with this, that's really good. I think that's what the card was designed to do. I kind of wish this only distributed 1 damage. In that case, I think it would actually be interesting. It still wouldn't work with Goblin Warriors, but it would be okay with Lizards and, you know, with themselves. So, that would be nice to see. But as it is, you can really do more harm than good with this one. Fireworker, 3 stars. So, 1 less attack than the previous guy, but has a positive effect. This is the standard 3-star rating for an average 2-drop. It's worse than Fia, but the effect to destroy an artifact, I think, is a good. It compensates you well enough. So, yeah, I think calling it 3 stars is fair. It's decent. It's right there in the middle. Mr. Lightning Bolt. I'll give this one 4 stars, I think. It's card draw plus a flexible effect. Similar to Word of Fire, weaker in that you can't do more than 1 damage. Better in that you can also use it as sort of a silence effect for a turn. You know, disabling an enemy hero power could be really good. Disabling a creature could be really good. You know, you could disable a Necromantic Cult if you need to. Decent card all around. And really the card draw is what makes it useful, because if you can draw a card while you're doing some other effect, the effect doesn't have to be that good. So, yeah, similar to Power Discharge. I think Power Discharge is probably better. A little bit better because it's a little bit more flexible. Like, this is not as effective as removal, but it's solid. Moving on. So, I got a row of cards here at the top with the intent of covering the Rage card, which is the 4th one in the top row. So, I won't reveal it. Anyways, Offering Yard Priest. 1 star. Absolutely worthless without heavy, and I mean heavy, support. If you can play this with 2 totems, that's actually pretty good because it's basically a Vanguard. But even then, it's just a 4-star card. So, yeah, you gotta get a lot of totems. And the thing is, the best totems are not common. That's the real problem. I think if the strongest totem, that is the lightning totem, was common, a shaman draft deck would be more likely. And this card would probably be better. But as it is, it's not going to be good. For this to be anything better than just a Vanguard, you have to have 3 totems out. And you have to play them. So in that case, it's a 4/4. Maybe with some other effects. But yeah, no chance. No chance, Mr. Yard Priest. We got Tortured Orc. 4 stars. Very solid 2-drop. Good stats. 2/3 is really nice. It's a slave, which is a bit of a bummer, but not that much of a bummer. It does mean you can't go overboard with these. Like, you can't just put, like, 6 of these into your deck, because they're gonna start interfering with each other. And the fact that this card exists and is good makes a few of the other Rage cards a little bit worse. And you'll see what I mean when I get to them. Next up, Word of Fire. 4 stars, same as Lightning Bolt. Could be up to 5 stars if you actually go Mono Rage, because then it's like a Fireball that draws you a card. I mean, that's ridiculous. Not instant, though. I mean, if this card was instant, it'd be pretty fucking ridiculous, honestly. But it's still really good for what it is. We're going to ignore the spoiler card. And we want the Flame Rune Warrior. 4 stars, one of my favorite Rage cards. Decent stats. The effect is pretty good. Dealing 1 damage helps out. But the real thing with this card is if you have several of them, because they all do the damage. So if you have 2 of them, they're doing 2 damage to everything with a target emblem. So, and because it's common, it's not actually that hard to pick up a couple of them if no one else is drafting Rage, as I've often done. Also, ridiculous synergy with Murder Instinct from Dominion, where if you equip him with Murder Instinct, he's going to straight up kill the thing that has the target emblem. So yeah, solid card, and it is one of the cards that gives the target emblem archetype some hope, but it's gonna need a little bit more than that. But just a solid card by itself. Mr. Gibo and Aroni. I'm actually not sure. I think I'll take a Flame Rune Warrior over this, so I'm gonna give it 3 stars. It's gonna be as simple as that. It's decent, certainly. 2 Goblin Warriors for 3 mana. That's not bad, actually. Decent board presence, but they only have 1 health, so they get screwed by a lot of AoE. And yeah, that's mostly it. Bonus points if you get a Firebrand Goblin, though. But other than that, I think 3 stars, maybe 3.5. Again, I think it's worse than Flame Rune, and I think Flame Rune is a decent 4-star card, so I'm going to call this a 3-star. Maybe it deserves 4, but whatever. Car, however, does deserve 4 stars. The 3 speed is pretty nice, and even though I think this stat line alone probably is just 3 stars, the effect is pretty significant. The fact that he can become a 4/4 flying, that's no joke. It means he has some potential to be a serious late game threat, because a 4/4 3-speed flying, that's not a joke. That's pretty good. And the not being able to heal is nice, but not actually that relevant. Rocky Berserker, 3 stars by itself, with potential to be better if you can actually activate it somehow. Otherwise, it's still good for picking up zombie legionnaires or just running into slow creatures. Particularly, really hates on militia, because you can just free kill them. Without any support, I still think it's a fairly decent 3-star because of the Swift, so he can do damage immediately. But there's a lot of ways to activate him, and if you can actually activate him and get him to be a 3/4, that's insane. Kayano is another way to activate him when he comes out with the Might Emblem and his Swift immediately. That's pretty good. Used to be really insane back with the old Kayano, we could pay 2 mana, put him under. That was really, really strong. Rocky Tribe Mystic, 2 stars. It's not as bad as the other Shamans. It's kind of a weak stat line. You know, it only has 2 speed, but not actually playable. It is one of the cornerstones of the Totem and Shaman deck, of course. But again, you need a lot of totems, or you need the specifically good totems. Gigantodon. Ooh! I'm going to call it 3 stars. I'm going to rate Zombie Giant 3 stars as well. It's a really big stat line, but it's got 1 speed. So, no, to be fair, if it was 2 speed, it'd be pretty interesting. It'd be a really cool, big, big creature, but as it is, it can help you go face, certainly. But I can't really rate it any higher than that. Boiling Blood, I'll give this 4 stars. The fact that it can return to your hand is really good. It has strong synergy with Alexa, just bumping up Malicious to be able to trade up 3 1s with 2 speed. Helps to go face in general. And again, the fact that it can come back to your hand is really good. Especially good with swift creatures, but just good in general. Obviously not as good as Murder Instinct, but anything like that. I mean, basically could read attach to a creature and draw a card, kind of. It is weak to Pacify and Outbreak, though, notably, because then the creature doesn't die and just you lose the Boiling Blood. Keep that in mind. Disciple of Zash, 3 stars, but with easy, and I mean easy, potential to be stronger. If you have a lot of freezing effects, you can obviously see how good this can be, because then you can just use it as removal. Super bonus points if you can put Murder Instinct on this. Then it basically becomes 1 mana kill something, and if they can't remove this, they basically lose on the spot, because you have a 1 mana kill a creature available every single turn. So yeah, pretty good, but by itself, it's pretty decent, but not amazing. It costs a little bit too much mana to get going in the beginning, and gets picked off by Flame Rune Warriors, notably. Though, if you can get several of these going, it gets a lot better. Oh, there we go. Flameborn Incarnate. I'm gonna go 3 stars. The reason being is most decks don't go beyond 2 aspects, so it's usually a 2/2. But I think the other effect of bumping up your attack is potentially pretty good, so it's not just a throwaway trash 2/2, which is otherwise would just be 2 stars. But the effect is dangerous enough where it's an actual threat your opponent can just ignore. Even though it has 2 health, I can't really rate it higher because you need time and mana. If you just play this on curve, it's not very good at all, unless they have 3 aspects. Goblin Looter, 2 stars. I don't know why this is double rage. I can't even remember the last time this was played and constructed. The problem is you have to play it. You have to be able to hit the face and do damage, and then you draw a card. I mean, realistically, if it was just a 1/1 Swift draw a card instead of that, it might be okay, but it doesn't always draw a card. And until you can actually get it to draw a card, a 1/1 Swift for 2 mana, especially because it's double rage, really sucks. You need a reason to go double rage, and this is not it. Certainly not. You need something like Phoenix or Word of Fire to make it work. I'd really like to see this card change, make it cost a single rage. I don't see why this needs to cost like this costs double rage, but Cavalry Field Captain doesn't cost double order. That makes no sense to me at all. So I'd like to give Goblin Looter some love. Massive Assault. I'm gonna kind of hedge and give it 3 stars. 3 stars is also I'm kind of indifferent rating. Obviously there is some strong effects you can have with this one if you have a big board, if you can get a lot of creatures. Good synergy with the Militia, because you can order the Militia to attack, they'll get the attack bonus, and then increase their speed, and then you can order them to attack something else. So pretty good there. So a little bit of a win more card, but not really. Just having +1 attack when you go for the attack is pretty useful. It's similar in a sense to Hands from Beyond, which sometimes seems like a bad card, but when it sticks around, it actually starts getting value. I'd say this is less good than Hands from Beyond, but certainly useful. I wouldn't pick too many of these, though. Molten Passageway. I'm just gonna rate it 1 star, and the reason for this is the constructed decks that use this, they specifically stuff their deck with really heavy creatures, so that no matter what you hit, it's a good result. But for an average draft deck, a lot of your creatures are 3-drops and 2-drops, so that's what you're gonna get a lot of the time. So it's not really that great. And the fact that the creature is gonna go away pretty soon, yeah, it's not really doing you many favors. Ogre Captive, 4 stars. providing you did not also pick very many forced laborers, the 2/3, because again you can't have too many slaves. A 4/4 for 2 mana is really good, but if you're already running the tortured orcs, you're gonna wind up with too many slaves. So you kind of have to go one way or the other. Because this is rare, it shows up less often, but it could be decent if you're just splashing. And assuming you can actually get some creatures on the board. A 4/4 is a pretty significant presence, but tends to get overlooked because the tortured orc is pretty good, but also a slave. So you can't have them all, unfortunately. Totem of Legend. So this is one of the 2 totems that's actually worth something. Now, it still gets 1 stars, because for this to do anything, it has to draw you at least 2 cards, which means you have to play 2 shamans with it. And that might be hard. And even if you do play 2 shamans, it's just an ancient wisdom. Whoop-de-doo. But it is the kind of totem you actually need if you want to make anything happen with totems and shamans. And it's in fact critical to get the card draw going. But yeah, it's uncommon, so you're not going to see very many of them. Too bad. Wall of Flame. Weird one. Really weird one. I actually have encountered someone who played this against me, and it was decently effective in that it did discourage me from attacking a little bit. You know, 1 health creatures don't want to attack because they'll just die, and 2 health creatures maybe don't want to attack because the damage happens at the end of every combat. So if a creature has attacked and has a target emblem on it, if it gets attacked, it will take the damage again when the Wall of Flames goes, because it's at the end of combat, it deals damage to each creature. So good synergy with Flamer Warrior, and if you're not playing very aggressively, this card could be really, really good. So it's gonna heavily depend on what you're doing. If you're just like kind of equal on the board and struggling for control, this doesn't really do anything. This is meant to be a stall card, and that's generally not how draft is played. So I'll give it 2 stars for that reason. But if you find yourself drafting more mid-range or more control-y, this could be pretty good. Especially if you're going advanced Zash, this could buy you 2 turns, which might just be what you need. So don't totally count this out. It's just that this is not generally how draft is played, but doesn't mean it can't be played that way. Can't click. Anyways, Black Market. Fun times. I'm gonna give this, because I mean you're comparing this to Ancient Wisdom, which is just straight up draw 2. How often will this give you 2 cards? Pretty frequent. I mean, you almost always get 2 cards. How often will you get 3 cards? Because that's really what you need to get. So the fact that your opponent controls what you draw is kind of bad. I'd say 3 stars, I guess. It seems this card is best for a kind of an aggressive deck, which is more or less what Rage wants to do. Because you don't really care which creatures you draw, you just want to get cards into your hand. It does mean, even if you draw 3 cards, if your opponent gets to discard your better cards, it's not even that good. You know, you'd rather draw 1 Fireball than 2 crappy 2-drops, usually. So, that's why it's only 3 stars. Moving on. Cannonade, 4 stars. Removal is always good, and the way it works now is interesting, where against a single creature, it's basically a guaranteed kill because it'll do 8 damage. And unlike Arrow Barrage, you could use it against a board of bigger than 4 to force a kill of a creature that you want. So, as an example, if your opponent has a 2/2 and a 4/4, an Arrow Barrage would do nothing. But with a Cannonade, you can mark the 4/4, and they have to kill it off. Because if they assign... Because they can only really assign 1 damage to it without killing it. So they'll assign all 4 to make sure that it dies. So for that reason, and just in general, removal being really good in draft, I think it's 4 stars. Not any more than that, though, because as all the distribute cards, it gets worse as the boards get bigger. Fire Blast. 5 stars. Similar to Cannonade, but much more controlled. being able to deal 1 damage is also really good. But more important is you choose, you know, where the damage goes. Unlike Cannonade. And there have been so many situations where I thought, man, if only I had a Fire Blast. Absolutely insane if you have any freezing cards too. But pretty good by itself. Firebrand Goblin. 3 stars. Even though it's a synergy card, goblins are not that uncommon. So swifting out a few things is certainly possible. Gibbo and Roni comes to mind. But other than that, it's kind of a poor stat line. But I am giving it a little bit of a generous rating. I could just call it 2 stars. But again, much like soldiers, there's a decent enough number of goblins that you'll pick some up without even necessarily looking for them. And in that case, this could actually be pretty decent. Oh. Lightning Totem. I'm actually going to give this one 2 stars instead of 1 because it is the most powerful totem. And this is basically the cornerstone of shamans. Again, it's uncommon, which sucks a little bit, you know. I'm glad it's not rare, because then I'd have to rate it 1 star, because then there'd be no way you could ever draft enough to do anything. But this is the totem that you could pick up in your draft and then get your totem deck started, because this is the totem that actually makes a difference. This could be good enough. If you just trigger it once, it's like not bad. If you trigger it twice, it's actually really good. And it doesn't even matter what shamans you use. So if you see a lightning totem early on and you're feeling adventurous, that is how you can start a draft. None of the other totems, specifically this one. That's why it gets a higher rating as being the best of the best. Javelineers, I'll give this one 3 stars. Great stat line. Ridiculous stat line. If this card had 2 speed, I'd consider giving it 5 stars because it'd just be a monster. But it's 1 speed, and so, yeah, similar to the Gigantodon, I think simultaneously better and worse. Better in that it fights a little better because of the range. It's harder to kill it in a fight. Worse in that it does only 3 damage instead of 5. So it's easier to ignore this compared to a Gigantodon. The fact that it costs 3 mana instead of 4 is a bonus in its favor, but I'm not going to give this 4 stars. Fire Dancer Shaman, 3 stars. Not a great card, but the 3 speed is really the only thing that saves it. It can actually be pretty good to be able to get the damage in, especially if you're going aggressively. But you can just ignore this, really. It's just alright. That's all it is. It's just alright. A decent enough filler where you can put it in, and it's gonna do something. Generally, most creatures with 3 speed are useful. It's a shaman, which is a bonus. It's one of the less bad shamans by itself. So hey, if you pick that lightning totem, that fire dancer starts to look a lot better. Whoa, Aerolak Warborn, the big badass, right? I'm gonna rate this one 4 stars. Why not 5? Well, it has no immediate effect, and that's its main problem. Yes, it's a pretty good stat line, 5/5, yeah, but doesn't do anything immediately. And in fact, unless you have that 4-color effect, it's not even really that good. It's just a big beat stick. I mean, it's fine. Don't get me wrong, it's fine. And it's double red, but hey, if you pick it up, that's a reason to go double red. Similar to Undead Hydra in that sense. Now it has 2 speed instead of 1. That's a big deal. And that earns it at least 2 more stars. If Hydra had 2 speed, it'd be rated a lot higher than what it's going to be rated. And which is not going to be high, I can tell you that. But yeah, pretty good bruiser. If you do manage to get the 4 aspects, it actually can be good because, for instance, for 6 mana, deal 2 damage to everything could be really good. But generally, it's just a big beat stick, big bruiser, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Flame Serpent. I think 4 stars. It's obviously a very specific card. You're going double rage, you're going very aggressively, and this is pretty good. 5 damage, swift and unstoppable. Usually you'll use this as removal. You'll hit a creature and then do some face damage. Very much afraid of Flash Freeze. Flash Freeze is really bad against this card. So yeah, but no, it's very good if you're playing a aggressive Burk deck. You just Burk away the front line. Flame Serpent comes in for a lot of damage. Now, if you're not playing aggressively, Yeah, it gets worse. But I assume if you're even considering this card, you're playing aggressively, obviously. Forced Labor. So, you know, I might even give this card 5 stars. Certainly the 3 mana version. But I'm going to call this 4 stars. And just like the Captured Ogre guy, the 4/4, it assumes you have not picked very many Tortured Orcs. Because it has the same problem. You can't have too many slaves. If you already drafted 3 Tortured Orcs, this card gets worse. If you have none, this card gets better. And in particular, you're going to want a hero that spawns creatures, so you can actually make use of it. In that case, the value is pretty good. You get 3 solid bodies for a decent cost. Not like when it was 3 mana. When it was 3 mana, that card was a little insane. And it will probably be rated 5 stars. Since in that case, you will just cut down on the other slaves and run this instead. Because for 1 more mana, you get 3 Tortured Orcs instead of 1. But at 4 mana, it's a little bit steep. Has a few limitations, so it's not as great as it used to be. But hey, it's all good. Just keep track of your slaves so they don't revolt on your ass. Merchant of Souls. I've almost forgotten this card exists. It was supposed to get buffed, but it didn't. So, I've actually almost forgotten what it does. So hang on, let me let me catch up real quick. Oh, it's this thing. So you get to resurrect something. Generally, you're not gonna get more than 2 energy on it, unless you get a big trade, which might happen. But we should look at this as if it just had 2 energy. Basically, it's like a half instill. It gets you back something with level 2 or less that costs 2 or less. So pretty much like instill with a certain limit. You can expect to get back probably a goblin, maybe a tortured orc. If you get back a tortured orc, it's not bad. But I'm just gonna call it 3 stars. Nah, yeah, 3 stars. Because it is 4 mana. And it is tainted. And if you're playing Rage and you're playing Burke, you don't want to be taking 3 damage. Generally. So yeah, there's some potential. Certainly, it could be insane if you get 5 energy on it. You could just like get 2 creatures back or something. But I think this is not gonna happen very often though. And also the stat line's a bit low. Where are we at? Ruination. 2 stars. It's obviously a very specific card. You would never pick up something like this unless it was best of 3, where the option to side it in might be great, because against artifact decks, it's obviously crushing, right? It's crushing. But without them, yeah, it's not gonna work. But it does draw you a card, so even if you hit nothing, it's not totally worthless. Totem of whatever. 1 star, obviously. Well, it's an interesting totem. The problem is, you have to go 3 aspects. This is not a very compelling reason to go 3 aspects, really. And you have to have some shamans in your deck, which all tend to be pretty bad. I'm not even sure shaman decks run this, though I think they should consider it, because a 4/4 going face or trading could be really good. But in draft, forget about it. Battlescar Elder, I think it's a solid 4 stars. Good stats, draw a card, really good. It is 3 aspects, but it's splashable. I think it's a fair enough reason to go 3 aspects, actually, to splash in Rage. I would say don't splash just this. Maybe splash this and a Fireball or something else. Then I'd say it's going to pay for itself. Dragonfire. Yeah, 5 stars. Maybe it's a little bit generous, but it's basically hard removal if you think about it. Just 5 damage kills something. Pretty much kills anything. Absolutely beyond crushing if your opponent actually has any artifacts. Because then it's basically kill any 2 things. And some artifacts, you know, Wisdom tends to have a lot of them. Airships are relatively common. You might run into implants, stuff like that. So I think that makes it a worthy enough inclusion in your deck. And again, another good reason to splash red. Maybe it should be 4 stars, but I tend to really praise removal because of just how important it is to have an immediate answer to something. And this is pretty much an immediate answer to something. That being said, I probably wouldn't go 3 aspects just for this, but this plus almost anything else, like this and one Elder, I think it's might even be good enough to add that one Rage aspect just for those cards. And Phoenix. 5 stars, of course. It's, as far as creatures go, perhaps the highest value creature you can possibly imagine. Good stats and flying, and comes back for a second time. This is the reason to go 3 aspects, for sure. It's great. I mean, unless it gets helmed or something, that's pretty much the only good answer to it. Or maybe Innkeeper also stings a little bit. It's a great card. High value, sticky. I don't know what more you could ask for. Ramgak. I think 4 stars fair. It can put on a lot of pressure. You do have to pay 5 mana, but you're basically doing 5 damage. Kind of like Flame Serpent. But he doesn't die. And the Goblin doesn't die either. So it's like a Flame Serpent that sticks around, that is split up among 2 bodies. I think that's pretty good. Maybe less compelling than Phoenix. But a sudden burst of 5 damage. And you could even just run it into something. It'll do 5 damage. You could trade it with something dangerous like Gomer Ironbeard, for instance. Because the Goblin will be attacking the same thing regardless of speed. So just Ramgak needs to be able to attack. And then you can pay the 2 mana and get the Goblin before they can pacify or whatever. So, yeah, solid. Solid card. No, just no. Red Dragon, 5 stars. When the game tells you should pick bomb cards, this is what they're talking about. It's exactly the kind of card that reads, kill this or you lose the game immediately. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. You'll often want to wait till you have 8 mana to be able to immediately use it. To you at least get a kill, then it's kind of like a Karthus with a much better body. But if they don't kill it, oh dear lord, it's basically game over. Pretty much, because you can either start doing massive damage to the face or just start killing all their stuff. You cannot survive a game where there's a dragon on the other side of the field for very long. That's just how it is. So, badass card. And now we move on to Dominion, the well accepted to be the strongest aspect, the most 5-star filled aspect of them all. And oh my god. Yeah, what can you do? Let's get rolling, shall we? Dacin's Guild. I don't even remember when this was buffed, where it now only costs 2 mana, but I'm going to go ahead and give this 4 stars. It's not very consistent, but usually you can get it to do 2 damage or something like that, and that's pretty good as removal goes because it's rechargeable. Obviously, you want to use it with the Assassin because it's deadly. You can use it with Temptress of the Seat, although she's rare. Great with Aristocrat because that's 3 damage that he's doing. So it's like a 2 mana deal, 3 damage to something. That's rechargeable. That's really good. And again, removal is really good. And if you can reuse it, it's really good. So yeah, it's good. Cathedral of the Night, 5 stars. It's extremely good. Always has been. Gives you not only removal but also life. It's a great stall card, an amazing stall card that lets you just 2 extra life. And a weakness emblem, and it recharges itself. Man, it's awesome. Stronghold Metropolis, 3 stars. It works best with Alexa, where you can sack the soldiers. We could also sack the ravens from Coronis, so it'll always have some use. We can just summon a raven and sack it to draw a card. Decent draw engine, but I'm not going to rate it any higher because it's a little slow in that you have to kind of sacrifice a card first. And then when you draw your... So, long story short, oh, sorry, I disconnected there for a second. It's only good with a certain synergy, and you have to sack a card first, so it's not until you draw the second card that it's actually good. And you don't always want to sack the Militia or the Ravens either, but certainly solid. Baseborn Recruit, we're going to keep the 3 stars, standard 1-drop. Even though it's a 1-1, it fights like a 2-1. The one advantage it is over Goblin Warrior is that it can fight a 3-3, for instance, and still kind of leave an impact on it, where it doesn't just get free killed. So, it's a solid 1-drop. It's decent. Mind Extortion, Probably 4 stars. You can use it to fish for removal, but just seeing your opponent's hand is generally pretty good. Even if you don't discard anything, I'd say it's probably worth the 4 stars. Spoiled Aristocrat, 4 stars. 3 attack for a 1-drop is pretty ridiculous, to be honest. And the attack is real. The effect is not really anything. It's not hard to play another creature. Now, keep in mind, you have to play a creature, meaning, you know, a Raven from Coronis doesn't count. That's all I'm saying. Assassinate, easy 5 stars. Instant removal, that's ridiculous. Doesn't hit everything, but, I mean, it'd be retarded if it hit everything. The fact that it's instant, that makes it kind of insane, because it's like a pacify, too, that you can use offensively. Really, really good. Cloning Vat, 5 stars. Absolutely insane card. Can also snowball to victory just by itself, giving you a choice of a creature every single turn. You can just summon Enchained Soul, and then just keep putting Might emblems on it. Yeah, it's great. Gross Experiment, 1 star. Completely and utterly useless without implants. And even with implants are good on anything, really. So you don't want to draft this specifically for implants. I guess if you have like 4 implants, this gets better because you could draw a card. But not really a priority to pick, since you don't always get those. And you certainly wouldn't pick this until you got an implant. Moon Priestess, 1 star. It's power discharge that doesn't draw a card, that is not even permanent, and it's terrible stats. Moonsteel Miner, 3 star. Even though it's a worse 2-drop than average, the effect is actually, I mean, it's an effect that's not useless. It's all right. Power Surge, I think 2 stars. I don't think ramping is really that big of a deal in draft in general. Yeah, it's nice that it draws you a card later, but I mean, just redraw them. Not that good. Power Lust Incarnate. This is an interesting card, actually. For this to be good, you pretty much need to go double Dominion. Well, I mean, you have to go double Dominion to get just 2 speed. And preferably you want triple. I mean, realistically, you could just stay on 2 and then get it to 3 when you need it. For the stats to be good and worth anything, you have to have at least 5 mana for this to be even a 3/3, and then it's maybe a Vanguard that you can't play on turn 3. So really, you need 7 mana for this to be a 4/4. But really, for this to have any impact, you do want it to have 3 speed and be like a 4/4. But it can be that, and it can certainly be insane. It's just, it really asks a lot of you, which it could be fine, but drafting Mono Dominion is kind of hard because Dominion tends to be picked a lot because it's so insane. So I think a lot of the time this is not going to work, so I'm going to just rate it 2 stars. But it's not even necessarily terrible if you don't draft specifically for it. It's just going to be a little underwhelming. Power Seeker, 3 stars. It can be insane, but at 1 health it's also very easy to kill. It's kind of polarizing, honestly, because, you know, I'm sure you've seen games where it kicks ass and games where it's useless. But I'm going to respect its power by not going any less than 3 stars. But it's really bad in certain matchups against Rage and Wisdom in particular because they have 1 damage effects. Shadow Step Assassin, whoops. 4 stars, excellent 2-drop. Not very aggressive, but trades reasonably well. Almost always 1-for-1. It's pretty good. Soul Flames, easy 5 stars. I mean, it's hard removal with pretty much no restrictions other than you lose some life. Whoop-de-doo. It's sometimes bad with Coronis when you start losing too much life, but that's what the second effect is for. Just gain some life. You'll rarely ever use it, but having the option, I think, is good. Vampiric Ashes, 4 stars. Pretty good 2-drop. Can defend itself very well with 5 health, and the ability to become an attacker is also very nice. Pretty cool, I think. Wish it was played in Constructed more. Word of Power, 1 star. It ramps both sides. Why would you even want to do that? Power Surge is a 2-star card. Yeah, this only really works in Constructed, and only if your name is Johto. Bloodborne Prince, 2 stars. Even though some people might say, wait, I've seen this card absolutely kick my ass. Sure, The problem is, you're putting all your eggs in one basket with this one, and a single removal card, or even a Tornado Outbreak, just ends it immediately, or any freezing effect makes it useless. So that makes it a bit questionable. You don't want to sack too much into it. What saves it from being 1 stars is the fact that you can use it in the middle of combat, which is pretty cool. So if your opponent is about to clean your board, you can just sack a couple guys into the Prince, and that can help out. But too many times I've seen my opponents fail miserably with this card. But I've also occasionally seen people kick ass with this card. But I wouldn't pick it. Champion of the Revolt. There's not very many slaves for you to search out. And other than the Minotaur, they're not very good. So I'm going to go with 2 stars because the stat line is really bad. And you don't want to have too many slaves. It's obviously a constructed kind of card. And especially given that it's rare, you're not going to get more than 1. So I wouldn't try it. Overcharger. 4 stars. It's a nice buff. +3/+3 is pretty good. And the Unstoppable is pretty nice. The fact that you get weakened really sucks. But I think it's fair because you start with +3/3. And even next turn you still have +2/+2. Which is basically Angelic Might. So hey, I think it's totally fine. It's solid. I mean, I almost want to give it 5 stars. But it does cost 3 mana. So even if you buff a creature and you get a free kill, you know, it costs you 3 mana to do that. So it's not like a Valor thing where you get a creature and a bunch of Valor and then you just get a free kill among other things. But still a good card, certainly. Northern Wanderers, 3 stars. Fair enough. I think the effect works enough of the time where it's better than just a 3 mana 2/3 with 2 speed. Good enough with Coronas because you have Ravens. So, yeah. Brynha, 5 stars. It's pretty easy to get it at 4 speed, and then it's basically kill anything and get a huge stat line on top. I mean, what more could you ask for? Probably less good than Karthus, but at least it doesn't have to go 4 levels. And you can just play her as a 3 speed 3/4. I should mention that she gets a lot worse if you're not planning to go 3 aspects. But hey, you always can. Oh, whoops. Silverblade Warrior. I'll give this one 4 stars. Very on the edge here. Mostly because the 3 speed is really good. A 3 speed on turn 3 especially is really good. It's not quite as good as some 4-star cards, but I think it's better than the average 3-star card. Yeah, maybe I should call it 3. I'm kind of like in the middle here. It's like, I'm not really sure about it, but it's a decent card. Siren of the Deep. I didn't really get much of a chance to play with it, but I've seen it in action, and it can be pretty devastating. Having to block it with everything is actually really obnoxious. So I'll give this 4 stars because of the fact that it can transform into a 5/5 is pretty nice. And the 5 health is actually really tough to kill in the early game. And the 1 speed doesn't really matter that much because they have to block it. So it's, you know, it's like it's gonna trade by default. And you can certainly control things in a way that, for instance, you could, even if your opponent has a high-speed creature, you just attack everything except the high-speed creature, and the Siren goes face, and the opponent has to block it with the high-speed creature. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Tainted kind of sucks, especially if you're Coronas, but whatever. Swiftblade Assassin. I think 4 stars. The range is really good on this. 3/2 with ranged, I think, is a very solid stat line. The ability is kind of lame, but sometimes really good because you can attack, bounce him, and then replay him. And yeah, you spend 6 mana, but maybe you have nothing better to do. And it's like he gets to attack and defend. Pretty good, I think. I think worthy enough of being called 4 stars. Mr. Titan, 3 stars. Kind of average. It's a big body, but it costs a lot of mana. I think it's a little better than Gigantodon for that reason. Yeah, no, it's definitely better than Gigantodon. Because of the 2 speed. But, so, while Gigantodon is like a low end of 3 stars, this would be a high end of 3 stars. But it's still 4 mana for a creature that's not doing anything immediately. And with only 2 speed, it's easy enough to attack. So don't expect any miracles with this one. But it's alright. it's perfectly fine. Slave Gladiator. Huh. Tough. I think 4 stars, but that's only because I'm hoping that I don't run up against Detonate. I mean, anything that costs 0 mana is obviously really good, right? You can spew these out really easily, and if your opponent can't immediately answer with an arrow barrage, you can just overrun them immediately. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. It is a slave, so keep note of your slave count. Chalice of Yunks, a 1-star. This is a purely constructed card, and while there's a lot of shenanigans with this one, usually involving some kind of life win condition, doesn't work in draft. Devious Plot, 5 stars. It's another hard removal card. Jeez, because the minion needs more of them. And it's 1 mana, which is amazing. You do have to sack a minion, though, so preferably playing this in, like, soldiers. But with soldiers is a match made in heaven. Because Alexa can just summon a crappy militia for 1 mana and just Devious Plot anything. So, a great card for that deck. Mercenary, 3 stars. It's just Golem. It's pretty much Golem. And I think I rated Golem 3 stars. I can't imagine having rated it any higher than that. If I did, I'm going to be shocked. I really don't remember, but the effect only really works with Devious Plot, and that's pretty much it. But a 2/2 for 1 mana, I think is fair enough. Hypnotizing Whispers, 4 stars. This is an interesting card. Pulling a creature out of the enemy deck is pretty cool. You can ignore the level requirements, which is a pretty big deal. So you want to save it till you have at least 5 mana. In that case, you can play pretty much any creature they have. Because no creature costs more than 4 mana. I mean, other than, what, Hydra, I guess? Or Bezarok. Who runs those cards? Bezarok is just too rare. And Hydra is not very good. So, yeah, it's you do have to pay 1 extra mana, but you deny them a creature, and you more or less get a chance. You'll almost never whiff with this, since, like, at least, well, like, almost half of any deck should be creatures, or a decent chunk of it, maybe 40%. So, you look at top 5, it's like missing Divine Offering. It's basically about as likely as missing Divine Offering, I think, which is very rare in draft. Power Spike Armor gets 3 stars. It is the weakest implant, but it's still an implant, and Unblockable is really good, actually. You can get a good trade with this. You can get a kill with this if you put this on a Power Seeker, for instance. Some people joke about this as being very efficient removal by putting it on an enemy creature, but I wouldn't actually recommend that. Certainly not in draft. Blood Bowl Elite, 4 stars. Good body. That's not much to say about it. 3/3 with 3 speed. It's no Phoenix, but hey. Usually you'll pay the one mana, I'd say. Unless you want to sacrifice a creature. But that would only really be good if it got hit by Prinha or by Haunt or something. Gnome Surgeon, probably 2 stars? You might pick up some implants, because they're all really, really good. By itself, it's just kind of a poor stat line, obviously. If you can get even 1 implant with this, it's actually pretty good. I mean, get it out of your deck, is what I mean. It's actually really good. Though, much like the Experiment, it's not quite... It's too reliant on that synergy. I think it is a little better than Experiment. 2/1 stat line tends to be better than 1/2. And, yeah, I mean, it's more powerful with this synergy, because you can actually just pull them out of your deck. You're remotely drawing the cards. You don't have to have the implants in your hand for this to work. Grappling Hook. I'm going to charitably give this 5 stars. The reason that it's rated higher than Overcharger is for the ability to pull creatures from the support row. That's actually really powerful, because there may be no other way for you to deal with flyers. And +2/2 and pull a creature could give you a really nice trade. So, very solid. It's not quite as good as some of the other 5-star Dominion cards, which there are many, but it's certainly very solid. Good with Alexa, again, because you can just put it on a militia. If you don't have anything to pull, it's obviously less good, but even a +2/+2 by itself is really good. But when you can pull their creatures to the front, it's amazing. Inherited Wealth. 1 star. I mean, unless you have a bunch of slaves in your deck, I don't see why you would pick this up. Mistress of Shadows. I'm not sure what to think about this card. It's kind of similar to Word of Fire in that it is designed to be played by slower decks, since you obviously can't be having any creatures that it kills at the time. So you play this, you kill one of their guys, it's kind of like Assassinate, and then you get a 3/3, assuming you don't have any small creatures. So, much in that sense, I'm going to give it 2 stars, because I think most of the time you're playing aggressively. But again, just like Wall of Fire, if you happen to have a slower deck, Mistress could actually be pretty good. It's just that it happens not very often. Murder Instinct, 5 stars, one of my favorite cards. The kind of things you can do with this are insane. One crappy looking 2/2, like a mercenary, could end up killing 2 large threats. Very deadly when combined with a hook as well, letting you kill anything. I mean, you can attack 2 things. You can get 2 kills with this, and it goes back in your hand. Really, really good. Much better than the other return to hand card like Boiling Blood. Temptress of Deceit, I'll give her 4 stars. The deadly means she always trades well. You know, she can't beat unless she's up against a shield. And the threat of looking at their hand and discarding card is very serious. So it's a very spooky card. Bloodseeking Mutant, also 4 stars. Pretty good. You can think of it as a 3/3 with 2 speed that distributes a weakness emblem. That's nice. That's not much more to say. Pretty good card. Maybe even could call it 5 stars, depending on the situation. But I guess I'm comparing it to Flame Rune Warrior, which is like a 3/2, deals 1 damage. Yeah, maybe it's probably better than Flame Rune Warrior, but maybe not quite 5-star level. Or maybe it is. I guess the question I should ask myself is, would I pick a Bloodseeking Mutant every chance I get? Would I grab as many as I can? Maybe I would. Alright, I'm going to call this 5 stars. I've convinced myself. Because you can just hit something that doesn't have 1 health, and then help yourself kill it. It's like a reverse Cavalry Field Captain in that sense. Yeah, fair enough. Raging Minotaur, 5 stars. It's an insanely large stat line. 3 speed and 4/5, that's ridiculous. But this card is bad if you're playing a slow deck, because it's damaging you. So if you're not gonna kill them fast, this could end up killing you. So for instance, having 2 of these on the board is probably a bad idea if you don't have any other creatures, because then they're stuck, you taking 4 damage per turn, and your opponent is very happy to just let you kill yourself. But no, otherwise, I mean, 4/5 with 3 speed, that's just insane. So yeah, it's a great card. It's usually worth the damage because you'll be doing much more damage. Do be mindful if you play this with Coronis, because you're starting to take a lot of damage, but it's really good with Elrike, for instance. We can just make a 4/5 3-speed illusion. That's great. Vampirism. So similar to what? Massive Assault? Yeah, it's pretty much the same as Massive Assault. I'd say it's better. I'm gonna give it 3 stars anyways. Though I do think it's better than Massive Assault because the Lifebound is pretty nice. And obviously valuable. But just like Massive Assault, you have to kind of play it, and then sometime later you'll get the value. You have to start with a board, but it could easily be insane. Keep in mind that vampires get it by default, which means Bloodseeking Mutant, Bloodborne Prince, or Bloodborne Prince is already Lifebound, so ignore that. So Bloodseeking Mutant, Prinha, Vampiric Ashes, and Karthus are all vampires, which means they get the Lifebound immediately when you play this. So the card gets a lot better if you have a lot of vampires, because then it buffs them immediately. Like, your mutant gets +1 attack and Lifebound, and that could be insane. But it's a 3-mana do nothing when you first play it, because unlike Massive Assault, you have to wait a turn before it does anything. With Massive Assault, you get the attack immediately when you attack. With this, you have to kind of pass turns. So, bad tempo card, and of course, useless if you're behind. Enslave, 5 stars. I mean, it's basically hard removal. And then some. I really don't like the fact that this is uncommon. Really don't like this. I'm glad it costs double Dominion because I would be fucking upset if it costs single Dominion. That would be retarded. Seriously. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, you take control of a creature. You can take Descendant of Divinity. That's always fun. Just keep in mind that you do make it a slave, so you can't have too many slaves with this. Like, there's a game I actually lost once because I took a creature when I had a Minotaur on the board, and then it couldn't attack with the Minotaur, and it couldn't block either, so I took the 2 damage and the damage from the incoming attack, and I ended up losing. So, just keep that in mind. But no, most of the time, this card is absolutely insane. Atriska, I'll give this one, I think, 4 stars. It's obviously a huge body. I'm assuming you're playing this in a deck where you can afford to sacrifice something, and in that case, it's just a very large creature. You know what? I'm going to downgrade it to 3 stars, because it kind of reminds me of Erlak, where it's a big creature for a lot of mana, doesn't immediately do anything. Well, Erlak was 4 stars, but here you have to sack a creature. Alright, fine. We'll bump it up to 4. Because it's big enough. I gave Spectral Aurite a lot of crap for this, for being just a 3/3, which, you know, dies to Fireball, and that's really bad. Really, really bad. This doesn't, obviously, being a 5/5 and deadly. So, yeah, I guess it's like a low 4, though. Like, I'd call this 3.5 if I bothered with such things, but I'm not going to give half-star ratings. So, yeah. Again, only 4 stars if you're playing this in a deck like Alexa, where you actually have things to sacrifice. If you don't have things to sacrifice, then you wouldn't even run this card. I hope that's understood. Overwhelming Forces. This card's a lot of fun. I'm going to give it 2 stars, though. The problem is, you either have to be super winning, or your opponent has to be super winning. And in that case, maybe it'll do something. Both are kind of unlikely. Okay, your opponent's super winning is, you know, not necessarily unlikely, but not something you should go for. And even if they're super winning, they might not have a lot of creatures. I mean, how many cards do you have to look through? For 5 mana, you have to get, like, 2 creatures at least, right? And then, you know, out of the 4 cards, if you look at 4 cards, you might get 2 creatures. That's pretty lucky. Yeah, I think you'll get a bad result too many times for this to be good. Cataclysm is a 5-star card. This is, in my opinion, the most powerful card you can draft. The number 1, because it is the only card that lets you come back against any board with maybe except something like a board backed up by a bunch of Flesh Sculptors. But other than that, it's a get out of jail free card. It's the ultimate comeback card. And comeback cards are super good. Yes, it costs 6 mana, and yes, it's double Dominion, but if you were ever going to go double Dominion, this is a great reason. Having this card in your deck is such a game changer, because it's simply impossible to play around this, because it's too rare, and so people will play into it, and then kapow! Sweep their board. Well, what more can I say? I'd rate this 6 stars if I could, but now we'll leave it at 5. Bloodwall Matriarch, we'll give her 4 stars. The effect is pretty strong, actually. There'll be times where she doesn't do anything, but there's enough spells going around where she'll have some kind of an effect immediately. Like, maybe an Exorcism is one of my favorites, if you can actually hit something, as well as Ancient Wisdom. But it is 3 aspects, and, you know, it doesn't always work. But easy 4-star. It's an easy 4-star card. Murderous Chieftain. So, comparable to a Triska, I guess, except that you don't necessarily have to sacrifice anything. You can just pay the 4 mana. Oh, you certainly are not going to sacrifice 2 creatures. Let me tell you that. So, basically, it costs 4 mana. For all intents and purposes, because you're not going to play this on turn 4 and sack your 2 previous creatures. That's a bad idea. So, generally, it's a 4 mana 5/5. It costs 3 aspects that when it destroys a creature, draw a card. That's pretty cool, I guess. Do I give it 4 stars just like Erlak? Is it better than Erlak? Maybe it's better than Erlak. Fine. I'll be generous. Though you might argue it should be 3 stars. Because It's basically 4 mana, do nothing. Well, not quite. No, Gigantodon I gave shit because of 1 speed, whereas this is definitely much better than 1 speed. Drayla, I think 5 stars, mostly because looking at the enemy hand is really strong. Really, really good. Stat line is decent. Not amazing, but decent. But seeing their hand and being able to remove a card, that's great. Yeah, they redraw, but who cares? If you discard a good removal card, they're not going to draw another good removal card. Well, probably. Probably they're not, but I still think this card is really, really strong. The second effect is also nice in the late game, if you have some mana to spare. So yeah, all around, really good card. Lord Karthus, 5 stars. So it's, again, it's another example of what a bomb card should be, right? I mean, it's a good body, instant removal, and you even gain some life on top. And you can actually play it on curve, unlike Dragon, and have it have an immediate effect. It's just not like instantly win the game when you play it. Still a pretty good card, though. No doubt about it. So that's it for Dominion. We are moving on to the final aspect. And here, I don't have to block the revealed card because it's already been revealed on Facebook. So, let's get into it, shall we? Haunted Cemetery. I think 2 stars. I don't think Zombie Legionnaire is very good, other than on turn 1. And this is basically more or less summon a Zombie Legionnaire at some point. You might eventually get more, but I mean, when you compare this to Tombs, it's like so much worse. So, not a big fan. Mausoleum of the Damned. I'm hedging over here because I'm not sure. I think the effect is good. Not quite as good as the Rune of the Dominion version, which could often just kill the creature. I'll still give it at least 3 stars because the -1/-1 should help you get a good trade at the very least. Pandemonium of Memeness, 1 star. It's terrible. It doesn't even help you ramp, and the effect is pitiful for 5 mana. Sanctum, 5 stars. Possibly the best corruption card, I think. It's rechargeable removal at no cost. What more could you want? It's ridiculous. Enchained Soul, 2 stars. Same as Pegasus. 3 speed is nice, but it's a slave. And not really like a good 1-drop or anything, but whatever, 2 stars. Move along. Nightbringer, 2 stars. Basically the same thing, more or less. Neither card is really interesting enough to warrant, you know, further discussion. Noxious Fumes, 5 stars. Excellent removal, 1 mana. Either helps you outright kill something or get a good trade because it's -2/-2. Reduces the attack as well. Solid, very solid. Plague Vermin, I think 4 stars. It's a solid enough 1-drop. The effect is pretty handy sometimes. It's a combat trick in a sense, in a faction that has no combat tricks basically, so good for that. But don't draft too many. This is low value. Totem of Tortures, 1 stars, absolute trash, and not even good if you have some shamans because the effect is just too small. Zombie Legionnaire, 3 stars. I'm going to give it the same treatment as the other 1-drops. It does its job. You know, it wants to be played on turn 1. It is a bit worse, though. It gets worse where something like Steelhose Spearman remains, you know, somewhat useful, whereas this doesn't. But it's pretty good when you play it on turn 1 because you're doing 2 damage. Power Creep Ghoul. I'm going to give it 3 stars. Yeah, it's a 3/3. But honestly, you don't really want to pick basic Nephoros in draft. It's kind of crappy. And that's what this really wants to be used with. Basic Nephoros. So it's just a 3/3 with 1 speed. Which is alright, I guess. You know, you definitely would want it. You'd happily pay the life. Because otherwise, it's a Zombie Legionnaire for 2 mana. That's trash. So, yeah. 3 stars. Consume Spirit. 4 stars. Why not 5? Because you rarely go Mana Corruption. And if it's just doing -2, then it's, I think, comparable to Noxious Fumes, except it costs 2 mana, so obviously less good. Don't get me wrong, it's still a good card. It's still a good card, but Mana Corruption is kind of hard to pull off because there's not much reason to do it. But if you pick up a bunch of Consume Spirits, it gets better. Curse of Risha, 2 stars. Mostly because it redraws. The effect is kind of minor and is often not going to do much more than like 2 or 3 damage. But it redraws itself, so it's not totally useless. I'm not going to rate anything 1 star that redraws itself unless it's just like useless. So, like literally has no effect. Dark Portal, 1 star. You cannot possibly draft enough demons to make this work. Death Curse Shaman, 4 stars. Pretty good early game card. Has that assassin good trade ability where it pretty much always trades 1 for 1, sometimes even 2 for 1. Yeah, you can pretty much never go wrong with it. Get a free Noxious Fumes with it. Yeah, pretty good. But you can't control the Noxious Fumes. Flash of Delirium, 1 star. Oh, did I just say I'm not going to rate 1 star anything that has draw a card? Well, the effect basically does nothing. Now, what about making a mill deck? Isn't that insane? Yeah, if you actually make a mill deck, but that's hard. You need a couple of these. That said, if you draft like 5 of these, I guess it could help. Just keep in mind that you're getting milled too. So you have to make sure you don't lose on cards too. So you have to have a card like Vulture to get ahead of them. And they have to not have a card like Innkeeper, which undoes the billing. And much like Shamans, this is even worse because this is an all or nothing. Either your deck is good enough to do this, or it's completely worthless. Because milling all but 1 card has no effect. You either win by milling, or you just lose. So that's why I don't think you want to go this way. But you could try if you're feeling optimistic. Haunt, we'll give 4 stars. Pretty good. It's particularly good against some cards like Harpy, where you can trigger every single turn. Other than that, though, it'll usually get you at least 2 souls. You know, for 2 mana, get 2 Enchained Souls. That's decent. I think that's good enough to keep it at 4 stars, but not 5, because in a lot of matchups, it's not going to do any more than that. If you just stick it on a creature, they'll just retreat it, and yeah, and that's it. Though you could argue, well, isn't it like removing it? Well, maybe. But they don't they have the option to not retreat it. Keep in mind that when a creature attacks that's haunted, the 2 guys that you spawn do not get to block. That's important. So if you're about to die, Haunt is not going to save you. Keep that in mind. And your opponent might be okay with you getting Enchained Souls anyways. Survivor, 4 stars. I think it's a decent 2-drop. It's got 3 speed, which is nice. It's got some survivability. It's alright. Probably less good than the Death Curse Shaman, though. Vulture, 5 stars. It's one of those bomb cards. Seems innocent enough, but milling 4 cards is not even a useless effect. Could mill some good cards, and it's very easy for this to become like a 6/6 the next turn, and it's a 6/6, and then it can grow by like 3 or 4 every turn. I mean, if you don't kill this quickly, you could be getting hit in the face for 10 pretty soon. Now, it's got 1 speed, but still, very spooky card. Remains, 3 stars. I think it's a fair 2-drop. Does the job. You could argue it's more like a 3/2, because if it fights a 2-attack creature, it dies, but it doesn't die to 2 damage removal. Swarming Spider. Wait, what is this? What? Okay, so this is one of the cards that was revealed. They did say this might not be the final version of the card. As it is, by the way, I mean, I guess I might as well kind of like semi-review it. I don't know how much different this could possibly be. The whole primary thing, I'm not really going to get into right now. It just means you can have any number in your deck. But I don't even know if it's going to remain this way. But, hey, it was revealed on Facebook. So I feel my hands are clean when it comes to reviewing this right now. I'm not spoiling anything of myself. So you're seeing a new mechanic here. What does this do? Well, play boost just means when you play it from hand, you can do this thing, right? So, okay, so if you play it, oh, by the way, you can do all of these. So if you play it, you can give it Deadly. So if it's a 2-mana 2/2 with Deadly, is that a good 2-drop? Yeah, that's actually a pretty decent 2-drop if you think about it. Less good than Assassin, but not by much. And when you look at the other effects, for 4 mana you can get 2 spiders. Now note, the second spider will not get deadly, and you will not be given the option to make it deadly. And the last effect, which I think is the most likely to be reworked, is that it gets bigger if you have a bunch of other spiders on the board. Because, again, you're going to have technically 20 of these in your deck. But even just look at the first 2 abilities, I would rate this as a 4-star card in draft. Jury's out on constructed, but probably really good there too. As a, completely fair on turn 2. And then could also be a decent value play on 4. So very flexible. Good card. Corruption, expect to see a lot of spiders in draft, basically, is what I'm saying. Assuming they don't rework this too much. Word of Pain, 4 stars. Same as Consume. Is it better? It's debatable. It draws a card, which is nice, but you do have to go mono for it to be good. Though, realistically, even with just 1, it's worth 4 stars, honestly. At 2, definitely worth 4 stars. At 3, might even reach 5-star status. It's a good card. Mr. Ghoul. I'll give this 4 stars. That's a really good stat line on turn 3. The effect is a bit lame, but presumably you're going aggressive with this, and this is a good card to go aggressive with. Also, it's a zombie, which is a bonus for Midnight Cravings. Swamp God Emissary. 3 stars. It's a shaman, but it's got a pretty cool effect of bringing something back. By itself, the stat line isn't that good, but you could bring back Death Curse Shaman. You could bring back the Infected Survivor. So there should be like Mesmerizing Spirit. I think is one of my favorites. That's a lot of value to get 2 creatures and a discard. That's pretty strong. So yeah, I think it's at worst 3 stars. Could be better if you actually have a target for it. And it's a shaman, which is a bonus. But again, we don't really care about shamans very much. But if you happen to be drafting shamans, that's as good a shaman as you're going to get. So this is the highest rated shaman, actually. And is in fact the best shaman by itself. Even without the effect. Okay, it's the same rating as the Firebringer, but I would rate this higher than Firebringer. If you can actually bring something back, it could reach 4 stars, even 5 stars, depending on the card. Extra bonus points if you're bringing back Flame Serpent. Duke Value. Whoa. I kind of want to call him 5 stars because bringing back almost anything is ridiculous. Yeah, that sounds about right. Bringing back almost anything with him is ridiculous. Getting a Ghoul, which is a 2/3, that's pretty good. You can get like 2 or 3 cards even. Holy crap. Pretty much a refill the board kind of card. Pretty good. And if you have 3 aspects, you can even get him back for a second time. Though comes back as a 2/3. But still, really, really good card. Zombie Giant, 3 stars. Same as Gigantodon. It's basically the same card. Big body, but 1 speed makes it suck. Bonus points for working with Heartsford and Midnight Cravings. Almond's Ritual. Yeah, no. Yeah, we're not doing this. Unless you're summoning Bezorok. Yeah, no. Eternal Servitude. 3 stars, I guess. It's like the Advanced Nephiros Hero Power. A little bit... Well, it comes back as a slave, which kind of sucks. But other than that, it's a decent enough effect. But you do have to set it up where you're killing something meaningful. If you can't just bring back a 2-drop, that's not really doing very much. Seems to be better for a slower deck. If you're going aggressively with zombies, this isn't really doing anything for you. But if you are thinking of going Advanced Nephiros or some other slower deck, this could be pretty good, but not really a high priority. Gets a lot better with Sanctum, though. A lot better. Flesh Sculptor. I think 4 stars. You can get a lot of value if it's not removed. Similar to Foundry Engineers, where it just keeps spawning things. Though, in this case, it doesn't spawn them by itself. You have to have things die. Especially good with Plague Vermin, with Infected Survivor. In fact, it curves perfectly into them, summoning a bunch of zombies. Super good if you get multiple copies, but it's being rare. Don't expect very much. But if you get even 1 zombie, it's decent. If you get 2 or 3 zombies, it's ridiculous. and Beyond. Oh my god. I'm actually going to call it 4 stars. It's the kind of card which you could never fit into Constructed, but when it's played and it's been around for a while and all your shit is slowed down, it's such a pain in the ass. It really is. Seems perfect for zombies. It's just, in Constructed, zombies would rather just smash your face and consume away all your stuff than bother with this crap. That's why it's not played there. Herald of Despair, I think 2 stars. The effect is a little too specific. And even if you're destroying an artifact, that's a very expensive artifact removal. And the energy removal is kind of situational, so gonna give him 2. We're almost there, guys. Mesmerizing Spirit, 4 stars. Pretty solid card. The body isn't great, but the discard is helpful. It's just a value card, but it's a good enough value card, really. Spoils of War. I gotta give this 1 star, unfortunately. I think it's too hard to pull off. Obviously, 2-mana draw 3 is great, but it's not gonna happen very often. That's the problem. Thought Devourer, I think 3 stars. Decent body. Similar to Mesmerizing, but the discard, I think, on the Mesmerizing gives Mesmerizing the edge. I'll play Mesmerizing over this for sure. Can grow, but it's not even doing face damage, which is a bit of a problem. But it's fine. It's flying, so yeah. Totem of Forsaken Thoughts, 1 stars. It's a crappy totem, really. It's not okay, it's not even technically that bad, but you not only need to be running shamans, you need to be running like corruption spells that cost 2 or less. Yeah, no. Bedeviled Fiend, 4 stars. I think he's as good as Vanguard. 5 attack is pretty spooky. And yeah, that's about it. Good beat stick. Well, my camera got away from me there. Whoops. Bloodwitch Harpy. I think I'll give her 4 stars because there's a lot of 1 level stuff going on, and this could really turn the tide. It might hurt your deck as well, but picking this might be a good idea anyways, just to have the option of going slow as a slow deck. Obviously less good if you're going aggressively. Deathbound Incarnate. Well, this one's a weird one. It can have an insane stat line. Like, let's get that out of the way. It can be a 10-10 pretty easily. But, because decks are smaller, there's going to be less stuff in the graveyard. You want it to be at least a 4-4 to be, well, even comparable to Bedeviled Fiend, right? And that might not work out. And it's not even going to kill your opponent if they hit it for like 8 damage. Again, milling 8 cards is meaningless unless you actually win the game. So, if they can't remove it with something like Freezing or Devious Plot or whatever, yeah, it can be really good, but something as simple as Innkeeper just instantly kills it, for instance. So, what does that mean? Basically means 2 stars. Harbinger of Sorrow. I'll give this one 4. Generally, you want to play it with the Taint. This is one of the only Tainted cards where you actually want to be hurt, because it's going to give you the souls. Right. Yeah, basically it's a 2/4 that summons 2 Enchained Souls. That's pretty good, actually. Very competitive with Bedeviled Fiend, I'd say. You do take 3 damage, but I think that's worth it. It's more defensive than Bedeviled Fiend, but I think it's good. I'm actually going to give this 5 stars. I'm just imagining myself playing this and summoning 3 creatures immediately. Yeah, I think 5 stars is fair. It's a pretty good play on turn 4, if you think about it. 3 bodies, 2 of them flying and 3 speed. Really good. Midnight Cravings. It's a fun card. I think what saves it is the fact that it's common, and so you might see it a lot, and people aren't going to pick it. Summoning something like Zombie Giant is really good. Getting you a free kill. Super spooky with Undead Hydra, but you have to draft Undead Hydra. It's cute, but I'm just going to give it 2 stars. Bonus points for being instant, though. That's actually really super. Like, you never play around Midnight Cravings, really. Reanimate, 4 stars. It's pretty good. It kind of depends on the kind of cards you have, but even reanimating a Mesmerizing Spirit will sometimes be good enough. The main power of this card does lie in the flexibility that you get to choose what you bring back. And that is really good. Bringing back a really big card also, like Dread Knight, for instance. That's good. So, solid card. Shrieking Banshee. We're going to give 2 stars. You can directly compare this with the Herald of... What was it called? The Harbinger of Sorrow. And it's got 2 less health. Yeah, it has flying. But a bunch of stuff has to die. Otherwise, it's not doing anything. So, I think I'd much rather play the Harbinger than this. Though, if you do summon 2 Enchained Souls with it, it's pretty alright. If you summon 1, it's kind of meh. It's a bit too situational, I think. It has the same problem as Spoils of War. Splitting Headaches. Sorry for that. I lost myself. I think 4 stars. It's a value card, just like Mesmerizing Spirit, but more so. Generally, this card gets better the more of it you stack. You could hold it for when they are low on cards, or hit them when you're about to attack, and then to make them discard their combat tricks. Generally, you want to save it for when they have just 2 cards, because then it'll just crush it. Because whatever they were holding, they were planning to unleash. And now they can. It's really soul-crushing sometimes. So, this card in general is pretty nasty. I don't like it, but I appreciate that it's effective. Tombs. 5 stars. It's the control player's dream. A zombie legionnaire every single turn can get out of hand pretty fast. It does require that you can at least somewhat contest the board. Otherwise, the zombies just all get killed and you don't accomplish anything. But if you're not behind on the board, you can very quickly spiral with this. Necromancer. So, you probably have to look at this as just the body because you're not going to have enough zombies for this to actually matter. Even if you make something like Ghoul deadly, it doesn't matter that much. And your zombie legionnaires probably just have to go face anyways. That said, it's still at least a 3-star card. The stat line is poor, but deadly means it never trades badly, basically. So it's fine. Suffocate. 5 stars. It's a board clear, right? I mean, not as good as Cataclysm, admittedly, but it's a board clear. And a board clear and a comeback card, and those are very good in draft. Dr. Styx. I think 5 stars, basically. It's kind of like Karthus. A little less good, but you can play it a lot sooner. If you do get to 4 aspects, it's pretty much Karthus. Kind of. You know, big body and kill a creature. And Unstoppable as a bonus. Now, you can also destroy an artifact, but you generally won't... This generally won't do anything. The only thing you might pop would be something like Grappling Hook, maybe. Or maybe an enemy VATS. But, no, it's a good card just for the enter the field, kill something. That's really good. Deep Sea Horror. Well, actually, I'm not even sure you can draft this. Wait, yeah, I think you can, actually. Yeah, I believe you can. 2 stars. It's basically Erulak without any of the effects. And for 5 mana instead of 4. I mean, okay, can attack 1 additional targets, but no, at 5 mana is a little too much, man. And it's double corruption? Like, this makes a zombie giant look like okay. Nah, I don't know. I'm just gonna give it 2 stars because it's 5 mana. That's a lot of mana. This really should cost 4 mana. I just don't get it. At 4 mana, I probably rated 3, maybe even 4. But nah, 5 is too much. Tribute is a 4-star. It's pretty nasty when it's played. It is a lot of mana, though. And it's only useful sometimes. So it's not like a always good, always flexible Fireball or the complete board clear of Suffocate and Cataclysm. But still pretty good. Does require double corruption, but it is a decent reason. Though I'm not sure I would do it just for this unless I had absolutely no other double card. Like, if I had to choose between this and Enslave, seems pretty obvious to me Enslave wins. But it's still pretty good. It can remove multiple creatures. Undead Hydra. Well, yeah, it's 2 stars, the same as the other guy. It's 5 mana. I don't know why it's 5 mana. It's when Erulak, when Atriska, when the Chieftain, they all cost 4 mana, and they don't even have 1 speed. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I'd like to see this at 4 mana. Would it really be overpowered at 4 mana? Would it? I think it'd be almost competitive. And that's what you want, right? We want all cards to be at least somewhat competitive. Are they scared that, like, the starter deck would be overpowered? Maybe the AI with these cards would be too good. Nah. Make it 4 mana. Come on. Necromantic Cult. Would give this bad boy 5 stars. I have seen more than once a Necromantic Cult just absolutely destroy an entire board by himself. So, I mean, any card that can do that obviously deserves 5 stars. It does require a little bit of setup, but because he only costs 2 mana, it's not too hard to actually combo him off. Dread Knight. I'll give it 4 stars. Pretty big guy. Seems comparable to Elder. 6/6 is pretty nice stats. Deadly is a bit unnecessary. And it does have an immediate effect of kicking back 2 things to the support line. That means they can't attack the next turn. That's good. That's a good card. Solid, spooky card. Sexybius. I think only 3 stars. I think it's better than Spectral Aurite by a little bit. Worse body. Well, I mean stats. But the effect is actually not that good. Really? It's nice, but not amazing. And it's a lot of mana. I don't know. Alright, I'll give it 4 stars. It is a decent effect. Like, doing 3 damage is actually decent. I've convinced myself to upgrade her up to 4 stars. Because I think the effect is certainly not trivial. It's not nothing. It's definitely not nothing. It is something. Healing yourself and doing damage like that, I gotta respect that. So I'm gonna respect the Succubus and give her 4 stars. Reign of the Underworld. I'm just gonna rate this 1 star because I don't think this should even be offered in draft because it's a stupid card. It should just be redesigned. Because what this card does is just totally mess up the game. Everything is now a slave. And yeah, this will slow down your opponent, but it also slows you down. So unless you're trolling, this really doesn't help you win. And it's just obnoxious. Ziera. Ugh. Ziera's a fun card. How do I rate her, though? Well, I'll give her 5 stars. It's kind of a tough call. I was comparing her to Elgaron, more or less. The -1/-1 is maybe not as good as Elgaron, but if it kills anything, which it very well may, you are getting Enchained Souls. So, yeah, I mean, if your opponent can't kill it, it's actually really nasty to deal with. And the fact that it makes your Enchained Souls not slaves, that's pretty good. It means they can protect her very well. And it can be a pretty big surprise. Even in Constructed, if this comes out of Molten Passageway, you can kiss your ass goodbye if you don't have hard removal, basically. Spooky card. Bezorok. I'll also give him 5 stars. It's pretty expensive, but it's a very powerful effect. But the fact that you can... It's pretty much like Infernal Tribute almost when you play it. Almost. With a strong body. It's pretty hard. It's kind of a lower 5 stars because it does require triple corruption. So maybe that should knock it down to 4 stars. But there's no doubt that this is a game-swinging card for sure. You could just play him on an empty board, and when he dies, you get maybe an Azarus, or a Succubus, or a Vulture and a Bedeviled. No matter how you look at it, it's value. And it gets super value if you have Reanimate, by the way. Dwarven Mortar, 5 stars. It's certainly a compelling reason to go Order Wisdom. Very compelling reason. It's an insane card. It's just remove. It's like, remember Disciple of Zash? Well, imagine that with 3 health and does 2 damage instead of 1. Now, it's only every other turn, but that's still better than Disciple of Zash. I mean, realistically, if this was every turn, it'd be like super busted. But it's pretty damn good. It's a great card, no doubt about it. So Luxio, I'll give him 4 stars. Pretty good body. The effect is kind of nice, but not quite as good as Mortar, and it is only 3 health. But it's a good card. If you happen to be going white-blue, you would put this in, obviously. But you probably wouldn't specifically make your deck white and blue just for this. unlike Mortar. Diogen, or as some people call him, Jogun, or something like that. Whatever. This dude. I'll give him 4 stars? Not really sure. It's definitely a good card. Not quite as good as it used to be when he was 2 mana. That was like a 6-star card. But this one, it's still decent. The stat line kind of sucks. But you get a card back. You can always get a shrine, if nothing else. So it's like a draw card effect. So it's at least 4 stars right there. And bonus if you can get any valor out of it. So 4 stars could easily be 5 stars. So don't be afraid to pick it. You do have to go specifically order nature. And I'm not a big fan of that. And that's probably why I'm not giving it 5 stars. That's kind of a bad color combination. It was white-blue. It's pretty good because you got like... Just because blue is a good color. Tren. So, much like Diogen, I'm actually going to give this guy 3 stars. Because it requires you, again, to pick a kind of an awkward color combo. And the stat line is, I guess, kind of good. But it is 1 speed, which kind of stings. And yeah, you can make himself bigger, but it costs a lot of mana. So, unless you have a compelling reason to go white-green, I really wouldn't pick this. Unless, of course, you want it for your collection, because it's a heroic, right? And you could just dust it for a bunch of shrines. And now the last few. Melindra is the blue-green card. I'll give her 2 stars. I don't think you're going to be able to get a spirit out that's meaningful. In Constructed, generally, you could get a Dust Titan out with it, and that's pretty good. But you're not going to get a Dust Titan out in Drafted. So, even if you do get something out, it's going to be something small. Not really worth this card. Jokri. This dude, I don't know. I think he's pretty good, actually. The only thing that sucks is that if you play him and your opponent has 1 creature, you have to do the effect. Which sucks, but if you can play him and bump your own creatures, one of your own creatures, that's really good. So I'm actually going to give him 5 stars. Because a 3-mana 3/4 that also bumps up your guy by +1/+1. I mean, it's not necessarily permanent, but, I mean, Cavalry Field Captain is a 5-star card. And Rage and Dominion is a good color combo. So if you pick up Jokri, just slap a few fireballs into your deck and you're good to go, man. Hell yeah. Azarus. This fiery little lady has been making a lot of waves in Constructed for sure, with her rather nasty habit of destroying entire boards. Now, we have to judge her just by her own merits. You know, you're not gonna get very many mill effects with her, probably. So how does she look by herself? If you're going to go Corruption Rage, is she good enough? Yeah, I think she's at least 4 stars. Because it is swift, and you can probably hit something or get a good trade. But you don't expect some kind of a magical combo, because you're not going to get very many mill cards, generally. Unless you happen to pick her up first. You know, you open your first pack, boom, there's Azarus. And then you just, you know, pick up a Vulture, a couple of, you know, flashes of Delirium. Yeah, then it could be absolutely insane. She could easily be a 6-star card, even. But I have to judge her as she is now, with no support. But even with no support, it's still pretty good. So, 4 stars. And last is Raigon. This is a really funny card. The stat line is insane, for sure. 3/5. That's great. It's the best stat line for the cost, actually, you can find. Comparable to Descendant of Divinity, for sure. Now, what about the silly little effect? So, the trick you're trying to pull off with this is play with double corruption. So, summon a Dr. Styx on the other side. Have them kill one of their guys. Then you kill the Dr. Styx. And you get a Dr. Styx. And then kill another thing, right? Otherwise, if it's on 1 mana, you have to give your opponent a Nightbringer, probably. Or a Vulture. Now, giving them a Vulture could be good, too. If you can kill the Vulture. If you summon the Vulture and you can kill it, and then you get a Vulture, because then you have mana to work with, and you can bump it up that way. So, for that reason, I think I'm going to give him 5 stars, because lucky him, one of his colors happens to be Dominion, so Dominion is already pretty good, So slapping a few corruption cards in there could be really good, just to be able to do that. Assuming you actually can remove the demons that you're summoning, so you're not just giving your opponent demons endlessly. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with this. And the 3/5 stat line, pretty good. And again, keep in mind, this summons the demon at the start of your turn, so they don't have any control over what it is. And again, Dr. Styx is the one you want to summon, because it's the only demon that you can summon that you can actually attack with Raygon, because Bedeviled Fiend will just trade with it. So, yeah, keep that in mind. But if you happen to have something deadly on the board, summon a Bedeviled Fiend for them, trade, and then get a Bedeviled Fiend. A lot of possibilities with this guy. I have not actually encountered this in draft yet, but I can easily see this, like, totally getting out of control. So, go get Raygon. So, that's it. Man, that was a long-ass video. Again, I'll just reiterate the rules I set down in the beginning. The best aspect is the one no one is picking. Prioritize removal when you can. And it's easier to go aggressive than control. And the best heroes are Burke, Coronis, Elric, Advanced Heiress, and yes, basic Alexa. I'm actually going to throw her in here because I've realized there's so many ways to synergize her that it works out well a lot of the time. So, anyways, thanks for sitting through all that. That's been nearly 2 hours. Good times, as always. Really flew by. And when all the cards are revealed and when they're finalized, I'll be sure to review them. I'll be reviewing them for draft as well. That's primarily what I'll be doing. But I'll throw out a rating for you know, the constructed as well. And other than that, I'll most likely see you guys next week for the Masters. Tune in for that. It should be good, as always. Will Cruel Tech finally break the curse? We'll catch you guys next time.